Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Carole,
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. I'm excited to get to know you, because your work I think is really, really beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And so I wanna know the mind behind the masterpiece.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling it a masterpiece.
So what are you currently working on?
Right now, I've got a few pet portraits on the go. I've always got pet portraits on the go, and I've got some wildlife pieces as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to start disciplining myself to doing more wildlife pieces, as well as landscapes. I haven't been doing landscapes for years, but it's something I really want to get into some more, as well as some plein air painting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've got quite a few things. I've always got quite a few projects on the go.
You know, that's something I wanted to ask you about. It's funny. Your work, it's not. It doesn't come off like, hey, I banged this out in 2 hours. It could have taken 2 hours. I don't know, but it doesn't look that way. And yet, from when I'm looking at what you have on your website and social media and stuff like this, it looks like you're extremely productive.
Yeah, I guess I am. I don't see that because sometimes I wish I could crank them out a little bit faster, but I don't want to rush through the work too much either. A pet portrait on average, I reserve a week.
Okay.
You don't consistently work on it for, let's say, 8 straight hours a day. My paintings are mostly oil paintings. I do pastel as well.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my portraits will be oils. So you apply a layer, you let it dry, you work on something else. So that's why I've always got a few things on the go.
Now, when you say a few things, on average, what is a few things?
Usually at least 3 paintings on the go.
Wow.
2 to 3
Wow.
paintings on the go.
So you're producing anywhere like about 100 to 120 paintings a year?
Not last year because the pet portraits take longer, and sometimes I'll have something on the go, but it doesn't necessarily get finished. A few years ago, I was doing a lot of still life paintings. I was into daily paintings, and I was cranking those out like crazy, and I was selling them on eBay. And that one year I painted, I think I counted just over 130 paintings,
Wow.
130 paintings. So that was a really busy year. I don't think I ever want to do that many again. Last year, I counted how many I did last year. I think I could be wrong, but I think I did about 40 paintings last year.
Okay.
But I was also working full time last year.
Okay.
So I was busy.
But what were you doing full time?
I was working for the government.
Oh, as a secret spy? No.
Well, maybe, but I wouldn't tell you.
Which now leads me to why your name has been changed. I was asking you, what's your last name?
My last name is Rodrigue.
Rodrigue. I can say it in Spanish, Rodriguez.
Yeah, probably the same thing. It's the same thing. My ancestor came from Portugal in the 1700s. And back then, when you came over to this side of the ocean, if you came to Canada, you ended up in Quebec most of the time. And they would change your name to a French name. If you came from Ireland or wherever, your name became a French name. So they took away the S and it became Rodrigue.
Rodrigue.
Rodriguez.
Now, I'm assuming you speak French.
Yes.
Do you speak any Portuguese?
No.
Fala portuguese.
No,
Fala.
no, I don't speak any Portuguese. Apparently, my grandfather apparently used to have a few choice words. I hear. I don't know.
Nice.
Apparently, some of the words lasted a few generations. I don't know.
Have you ever been to Portugal?
No, but I do
Oh,
plan on it
do
eventually.
do go. It's becoming
Mhm.
the art hub of Europe.
I've been seeing that a lot.
Yeah, I mean Madonna just moved there because of it, and
Oh, is that right?
yeah, and so there's a lot of money is coming into Portugal because it was so cheap to live there for so
Wow.
long, and it's that whole, what do they call it, regenev where
Rejuvenation. Yeah,
yeah.
a
Um,
rebirth.
yeah, and it's often done. You bring the artist in, and then they kind of help build that, and then money follows after that. Um, and so when I was there for 5 months. They had this big luxury conference there, and they were bringing
Hmm.
all these craftspeople and artists and finance people, and it was just about establishing within Portugal the hub of luxury lifestyle that would then
Nice.
go out to and it was cool because it wasn't about like, hey, buy these items. It was a mentality that they were trying
Hmm.
to facilitate. um so if you can ever get there, especially for the landscapes are beautiful. Eh, there are dogs everywhere, so if you ever want to do a painting of a dog, they're just
Yeah.
everywhere.
Maybe I can retire there and do plein air painting and throw some dogs in there.
Well, actually, I met a lady. It was funny. She came from Savannah, Georgia,
Hmm.
and I think a year before I was born. So I think it was 1975.
Okay.
In Savannah, that's a port city, and this guy came in on his boat, and this
Okay.
young Savannah belle, Southern belle, basically said bye and jumped on the boat. And for 40 years, I've been living on a boat,
Wow.
right, with her husband now, of course, and he's a photographer. She's a painter.
Huh.
Incredible. Both of them are incredible. And they just travel the world on this boat for the last couple decades. And
Wow.
she has a couple friends out of Canada who spend about 4 months out of the year in Algarve, Portugal, which is the
Hmm.
southern affluent area of Portugal.
Okay.
Very, very beautiful. Great caves. Incredible place to do painting. Um, and they have like a little artist community there. And so if you're interested, I'll connect you guys, and maybe you can
Sure.
hook up with your other Canadian
Absolutely.
sisterhood there.
Right.
So you're doing a lot of more painting portraits of pets.
Mhm.
Before you started doing that, did you have any experience with that, or was it more like other types of subjects?
I used to do a lot of pets several years back,
Hmm.
and then I had gotten into the still life. So yeah, I've always painted pets. Even I started painting when I was about, I'm going to say 15.
Nice.
So somewhere between the ages of 14 and 16, I started oil painting then.
Wow.
And yeah, I used to do animals, and I think I've always pretty much done animals. So there's only that one period of time a few years back where I did a lot of still lifes,
Hmm.
but now I've gone back to animals because it was always my first passion. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's cool. So, as a 14, 15-year-old little
Hmm.
Carol,
Yep.
um, you get these oil sets. Like, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. The way I got into it, I was always interested in arts and drawing like my whole life. Since I was a little kid, I always used to draw, and my mother thought I was talented. And she used to take these little community art classes. You didn't really learn much there. You just went there. And
Mm-hmm.
she went there with a group of women, and they had their easels, and they painted from the old Walter Foster books.
Mm-hmm.
And so she
I
wanted to
remember those
bring.
books.
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
still have a big box full here that I have to
Really?
give away to an art club or something because they're just collecting dust here.
Oh,
But
man.
yeah, she wanted to bring me there. I guess I was a little troublemaker, getting into trouble, and just as a way to try and keep me busy and to get me into something, she started bringing me to these community art classes she was taking. So I'd go and started painting with those Walter Foster books, and the rest
Hmm.
is history. I've always painted since then.
Now,
Her paints became mine naturally,
hmm
and that was that. And my aunt as well. My aunt, her sister used to paint with oils as well. She lived in New Mexico for a
oh,
long time, and when she came back, she had a big, huge collection of oil paints, and she gave them to me. So that pretty much started between her paints and my mother's paints. That started off my oil paint collection.
nice. And you
Hmm.
were obsessed ever since.
That's right.
Now, in that sharing, you said something extremely important that I must, because the audience is demanding it.
Oh yeah.
We have to explore it. What kind of trouble did young Carole get into?
I'm not just getting in with the wrong crowd. And I think when you're that age, the wrong crowd is always just waiting around the corner to suck you in, right? So, yeah, it was just negative influences in my life at that time.
Hmm.
And, if you have a young teenager full of angst, which is a pretty normal thing at that age with hormones and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
being a teen could be hard for a lot of kids. So, yeah, there's
So your mom
always.
actually was pretty brilliant then. Like she gave you a way to then pour some
Hmm.
of that energy, at least into a constructive place.
That's right.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's cool. Very,
Yeah, I
very
think,
cool.
yeah. And something that I was extremely interested in to begin with.
Yeah. Because you were drawing and doing quote unquote art long before that.
Exactly.
So do you remember your first experience or one of your first experiences with the importance of art? Maybe not necessarily doing it, but that art was significant to you?
I have a couple of stories. One is pretty negative, but it was one that affected me greatly when I
Okay.
was a kid. I think I was in the third grade, and
Mm-hmm.
we always had art class on Friday afternoons at the end of the day. And I didn't want to put away, I just wanted to finish my piece. I was almost done. And I had like 2 minutes left to finish on there. And the teacher got upset because I hadn't put away my stuff when she told me to put away my stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
she came over and just laid a slap on my hand. Back then, I was in the 70s, and it didn't happen often, but sometimes teachers would touch kids,
Mm-hmm.
slap my hand. And I remember it was just a really jarring moment.
What did you
And
do? Did you look at her?
I looked at her and I finished my piece.
Damn right. Damn right.
And that's always stuck with me. And I think it could have went either way. Either a kid could have either given everything up right there,
Mm-hmm.
or just persist and say kind of like, hey, up yours. Like
Nice.
pretty much what I did. And yeah, that
You know,
little
there's
rebellious streak.
there's this a system called an enneagram system.
Hmm.
And it basically is 9 different personalities,
Hmm.
and it was designed by the Greeks like 2,000 years ago. And it was interesting because just kind of seeing the amount of production that you're doing,
Hmm.
um, which which is kind of like taking on a huge, it's like a David Goliath thing, right? I mean, it's like it's incredible. And with you, I was feeling a certain energy, and now with that story, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. And what I think it's a number 8 on this Enneagram system, which is the leader or the challenger. And
Okay.
when they describe this person, they often say one of the early childhood experiences is the child basically falls in love with something. They're doing it, and
Hmm.
and they feel engrossed in this. And then usually an adult or someone will come over and jar them and basically try to almost make them feel bad for what they're doing, and they don't get it. They look at them like,
Wow.
what the hell is your problem? And then that becomes like this little recurring uh generator in their life, like, hey, you said I can't do it. Mm-hmm, I'll show you, like.
That pretty much describes me to a T.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never been one for convention and rules. And I mean, there's a time for rules, and then there's a time to break rules, right? And I think
Indeed.
art reflects that pretty well too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. um So what's one of your positive stories?
Yeah, then it was eighth grade.
Hmm.
We art class again. We made paintings, and paintings went well. Everybody had nice paintings, and this was, I think, in the fall. Come the end of the year, it was the end of the school year, and then you transition to high school. They gave me an award. The school created
Hmm.
an art award, and it was the first ever award of this type. And apparently, they came out with it because they liked my painting so much that they decided to come out with an art award. So I was the first recipient of that specific or particular art award, and then they started handing them out every year. I don't know if they still do.
Hmm.
Quite a long time ago, but yeah, I was the first one to receive that award. So that was pretty encouraging too.
Hmm.
It was a
That's
pretty
awesome.
defining moment in my artistic pursuit, so to speak.
Um, that's awesome. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to when you were third grade. Okay,
Okay.
so third grade, you're what, 7-ish? Well,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, when you're doing that project and you're into it, was that like your first time falling in love with art, or
No,
were you already in that space?
I was already in that space. I think I getting crayons and coloring books was my favorite thing to get as gifts. As I remember, I think being
Mm,
my third or fourth birthday, I
nice.
was so excited because I had received crayons and coloring books. And I actually used to steal my brother's. I used to go through all his coloring books. I used to go to my cousin's house and I used to read all of her coloring books and just go through them like crazy. My aunt had to hide them from me. So,
That's
yeah, and
awesome.
it's always been, I think I've always had that in me. So,
Wow, that's
mhm.
cool. That's very, very, very cool. That's the Rodriguez side of it. Um,
Must be.
well, that's fascinating. I really like hearing that kind of story. There's a furnace burning in you,
There
and
is.
that's really cool. So now you're past 15, which I think is beautiful that that was your first story when you were
Hmm.
a kid, because I often say when talking to people in this podcast that um, I always encourage people to go to that age between 12 and 15 when they're not really an adult and they're not really a child and they're kind of in
Hmm.
this weird space.
Right.
And oftentimes in that moment, within that little 3-year window, there will be self-identifying decisions and choices that people make that either when they do become an adult, they end up squashing.
Hmm.
But if you're on this podcast, it's because most likely, probably 99.9% of the time, you didn't squash it. Some people may have deferred it, but at least they resurrected it, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I'm kind of curious to kind of see what the percentage is of people in that time between 12 and 15 who
Hmm.
basically said that was when I knew that's what I wanted to do, you know,
Right.
and really identified with that.
And do you get a lot of positive?
Oh yeah, I so far I think it's almost everyone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Um, the because I think when you're coming out of that kid thing and it's
Hmm.
like you have no autonomy, right?
Right.
And then as an adult, everybody says, "Man, when I can't wait to be an adult." Why? Because you have now power.
Hmm.
But you're in that little limbo state, and you may be thinking to yourself, "Okay, well," and you start beginning to think about, "Okay, I'm an adult." It's not necessarily about your job, but how you're going to contribute, how you're going to like,
Hmm.
who are you in this new thing?
Hmm.
And but you don't have people telling you, oh, there's no kids involved, there's no pressures, no responsibilities, and so there's this beautiful moment of just freedom for most people. For most
Hmm.
people, um, so I remember I was talking to my ex-wife and her sister once, and I asked them that question, and they looked at me and they're like, "We were just hoping to just stay alive and get a job one day, right?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, right?" And because they were from Guatemala, and
Okay.
where they were from, you had to be inside by 9 o'clock at night, or you would most likely be shot or dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and as kids, they would walk by and see trucks and they'd look in and it'd be stacked with bodies. And
Oh, that's awful.
yeah, and it's my son has his name is Solomon, and his his great grandfather, his mom's grandfather. One of our uncles did something very stupid, and and with a bad group of people.
Okay.
And to get payback on him, they went and knocked on the door, and his father, who everybody loved in the community, answered the door, and they shot him, right?
Wow.
And so you live in that kind of environment, the question of, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, really just doesn't come up.
How about alive?
That's what they said. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Now you're 15-ish. You make it. You're your mom's dragging you off to community art.
Yeah.
With
the old ladies.
Exactly. To the white hair club.
Yeah.
Purple hair. Now you're free. You're out of high school. Did you go to university for art, or what do you do?
I didn't pursue art because back then you couldn't make a living with art. But that's what everybody kept telling you, right? And I wanted to. Local college I think they had a graphic arts class or graphic design, and I wanted to take that, but it was discouraged by my parents because they never thought that you can get a job working in the arts. And so I didn't. And that kind of threw me into limbo throughout my adult life because I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So I pursued other things instead. I became an esthetician. I worked various jobs. I worked for the government for maybe 13 years. I taught literacy to adults for about 8 years, but was never really satisfied because it's just not what you're meant to do.
Yep.
And even with my government job, like the money was good. I could have stayed in that quite happily for the rest of my life and been happy financially, but that burning inside of that soul thing wasn't fed. So I probably would not have been happy, So I made a decision last year. That was it. I walked away from my government job and just went to painting full time.
Good for you. Good for you. That's awesome.
I was lucky I was able to do it. I was lucky to have been in a position I was able to do it. I understand how most people, that's just not realistic, but I was able to. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
It is.
And it's interesting. I know some of the people that I teach come in and they're concerned because they did something very similar to what you did, right? They had to either wait until their kids were grown up and out of the house, or maybe some of them have to wait till maybe their parents pass away, because they're taking care of them or something like that. And now they have time and they have some resource, right? So, and they've given to everybody else, and now they're saying, okay, this is my time, and they're coming back to that first love, which was art. And I encouraged them with this idea that, as an artist, I don't think it's good enough just to quote unquote express yourself. A baby expresses itself like, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But once you add, you need to first start there. You need to have that passion, that I sense something, the self-awareness, like there's something going on in me and I got to get it out.
Yes.
And then you combine it with intelligence, which then gives you a language so that you can effectively communicate something.
Well said.
Why, thank you. And it's that what we are is we're communicators. Now, what you communicate may be different. It may be a sensation. It may be a narrative of a story. It might be an expression, an idea, whatever it might be. But there's something that needs to be communicated. And so the oftentimes if a painter, gets that time between 20 and 40, just painting, they become really, really good, but they have almost nothing to say. And so a lot of times when you go and you put in the hours into work and to raise the families and all this stuff, and you've learned, you've experienced life.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come back out at the other end, you have something that you can actually say that has value
Mm-hmm.
and meaning to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a way of maybe creatively coping with things, but I think there's truth in it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a lot more profound work once you know you have something to give.
Yes.
Um, so about a year ago, you're saying that you came out of this time where you were like, this is who I am, and I'm owning this.
Yes.
Um,
And I was kind of guided into that too.
yeah. What's the story behind that?
Just clients. I was doing pet portraits while I was working, and
Okay.
just stories I was getting back, feedback I was getting from clients, and all I kept hearing was how much I was profoundly reaching and touching these people and
Mm,
making a difference in their lives. And you wouldn't think that doing something like drawing a dog's picture or painting a cat's picture would profoundly move people, but the one that really affected me the most, I received an email from a client. I had been commissioned to paint her great grandmother's dog who had passed away maybe years back. I don't
mm,
remember. And this sweet little old lady was in an old age home. And I think
mm-hmm,
it was her 90th birthday. And the whole family, the commission was done for her birthday, and the whole family was there. She sent me a video of the moment where her great grandmother opened her painting.
mm,
And I felt like a fly on a wall in this old age home. And she's surrounded by family. Some are even over from overseas. That's how
mm,
much this little elderly lady means to them. They came over from overseas just to witness, be with her on her birthday. And she opens this bag with the painting in there, and she immediately recognizes her dog and starts crying.
mm,
And this is a little lady at the end of her life. She's surrounded by her family. It's such a personal, important moment for all of these people. And in some way, I was able to be part of that without
mm-hmm,
ever having met these people. It was part of a really special and important moment in their lives. And I affected it. I played a part in it. And it was a big part that I played in it in some way. And that really moved me. And
mm,
that's the first time I realized, like, wow, it might just be a dog to somebody, but this was really important to these people. And I played a part in that. And that's where it kind of hit me that, yeah, this was something important that I was doing.
yeah. That's wow. You know, in early human um, development, you have hunters and gatherers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we think,
Right.
okay, yeah, that. But you also had that shaman
Mm-hmm.
who was your craftsperson, your artist, your doctor, your spiritual leader.
Mm-hmm.
And their job, their function, and I always think it's very important because the shaman didn't come after the Industrial Revolution. You know, I mean, this was part
Mm-hmm.
of out of whoa, we're humans. What do we need? We need to hunt. We need to, this happened long before farming. You
Mm-hmm.
get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, and over organized systems and things.
Mm-hmm.
This hub of folks said we need people to go out and protect us. We need people to go out and hunt for us. We need people to go out and gather this for us. We also need a specialized function that will allow us to have hope and courage for things unseen, aka
Yes.
maybe the future, but
Mm-hmm.
also things that will connect us to our ancestors or the things in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
Archetypes.
function we serve.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward, 10,000 years or millions of years, or whatever the hell it is, um, you know, oftentimes artists are looked at as, oh, that's a pretty little thing you do.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a second, show me anything that you can visually see or touch or smell that wasn't created by a creative mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, but more importantly, the fact that you have that experience, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That you were able to connect this woman back to the little girl version of herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, man, that's just incredible. That is a magic spell.
You said it very well. That's what it did to me. And it made me realize so much at that moment. It's more profound than I can put into words.
Mm,
The feeling that I got watching that video just can't be put into words, but it really changed how I looked at my art and what I do, and how I needed to see my art and just realize that this is what I was meant to do.
indeed, indeed, beautiful. Um, how would you describe your art? Like, what one or two things about your art do you feel when you step out of yourself and you look at it, you're saying, "Wow, that's my fingerprint." But more importantly, that's that's what makes my work special.
Ah, do you mean as in the technical side, or
Whatever way you want to answer that.
what I hope it does is maybe
Oh, no, no, no,
maybe
no. We
leave an
can't. We can't. You
impression.
can't. You can't give us that answer.
No,
The I
you're
hope it is
tough.
is a cognitive thing. That's your
Right.
brain overthinking it. I want to know what your heart is. I want to know what you feel when you look at that and you're like. Let me ask you it this way: have you ever painted something and then you do something, you step back and you impress yourself?
A few times. I try
Okay.
not to. I try not to think, to let myself think that my art is just all that or that good.
Okay. Fair enough. Because that's ego. Um. So when those moments happen, when you're just like, "Whoa," like was that even me that made that thing, right?
Yeah, I've had those.
What
Yeah.
was like tell me one experience around that was just like you just knew you walked into a very new realm, a new dimension of artistry.
I have to say, awe-inspiring beauty and inspiration.
Okay.
Okay. I want to make sure that what I do leaves something positive in this world,
Mm-hmm.
and that people could look back later on and just because a painting was beautiful, that they realize that the world is beautiful.
Mm,
You'll see a lot of people paint politically motivated paintings and
mm-hmm.
negative aspects, and that's okay. Like, everybody has their place in the arts.
Yep.
But that's not where I'm at. Where I'm at is I want to leave a beautiful impression.
So you're
And
doing it
maybe
for beauty's sake, just
for
so that we
beauty's,
know
yeah,
that beauty exists or existed.
exactly. And there were
Wow.
beautiful things and these beautiful creatures, and this beauty inspires other people.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you say that.
I'm inspired by beauty and by nature, and how nature can leave you awestruck.
Hmm.
So I want to look back on my paintings and be able to say that
Wow.
it
That's
did the same
awesome.
thing. If
They
I
do.
achieve it
They
or not,
do.
I don't know. Oh, well, thank you.
No, you're achieving it. And when I look at your work, I'll tell you, well, I've talked to a bunch of people who do pet portraits,
Hmm.
and I'm really fascinated because so far I haven't. I've been able to genuinely, honestly, and sincerely give a compliment on every single one of them, and the compliments are all different.
Okay,
And so I was looking at your work, and I was like, oh, oh, there it is. I'll tell you what I love about your work. Sure,
please.
you have good techniques and things like that, but what I love about your work, and it doesn't matter if it's a dog or a bird or
Hmm.
a bowl of lemons or something,
Hmm.
they all have the same thing going on in all of them. And this is what I think is part of your fingerprint.
Okay,
There is a subject in all of them: dog, bird, lemon, whatever. But what's I think unique to you is that there is an atmosphere in which all those subjects are in. And it's
I'm happy you
very
said that.
okay.
Hmm. I'm happy you said that because I think about atmosphere every time I paint.
Hmm.
I think it was Robert Bateman many years ago had said something about don't just paint your subject, paint the atmosphere. And every time I make a painting, I think about that atmosphere. So the fact that you said that, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm
Now,
glad you see
how
that.
would you describe that atmosphere?
It's the air around the subject, the light. I
Mm-hmm.
try and create it using light. And so that the atmosphere will leave the mood, and that's what will leave an impression in you.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
what's the mood that because in a lot of your paintings you have a very similar atmosphere, which I think um, don't take that in a negative way.
hmm hmm
That's part of your fingerprint,
hmm
right? And that atmosphere. There was one artist who said the air in a painting is not the same air we breathe, right?
exactly.
Like this air has a thickness. It in my opinion, it is actually the subject, and then the dog or the whatever is just the visitor in that space.
Interesting.
You like that, right?
I like that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Make a little T-shirt on
Very
that
good.
one.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments where I just stepped out of myself. Like, did I just say that? That was cool. Okay.
It's that zone thing.
Oh, exactly. You know what? That's it. And I read that in your bio that you were talking about being in the zone.
hmm
That's exactly what it is. You're
Yeah.
actually illustrating or capturing not just the subject of the portrait, but actually the zone in which you are
hmm
in when doing it.
hmm
That's what it is. Wow, very cool.
Awesome. I'm glad you see that.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, you're making me happy.
Well, you're
Um,
making me happy too. That's like, I think it's the first time that somebody's exactly pinpointed what I was trying to express without being able to express it. I think it, and what you said was like, yeah, yeah, he's got it.
Thank you. Very cool. Very cool. It's one of you were talking about beauty. One of my mottos in life is to flood the world in beauty. It's one
Yeah.
of my missions in life.
Well, same here.
Exactly, and that's why I started the podcast, because I wanted to bring artists on, and there was a challenge to it. Could we speak about art in a very meaningful way
hmm
without looking at it?
hmm
And um, and and we are,
hmm
and then part of that is when you bring on people, sometimes you just feel like a connection right away with people. Um, I feel that with you. I feel like on a soul level, there was a very nice harmony, and so some of the things you're saying and doing, I can totally see and get, uh, and the whole concept of doing, um, making beautiful things, not for, of course, you're going to sell them and this, and
hmm
you got to deal with the client, but like outside of those things,
hmm
um, that you're making it for beauty's sake, really
hmm
to document and journey and
Yeah,
to keep a record,
that's right. And I have to throw it, and they're not for me. Every time I paint, even if it's not a commission,
Mm-hmm.
I always paint that this is not for me. It's meant for somebody else.
So
And
it's a
I don't know
gift.
who, yeah, sometimes I don't know who that person is until the painting's gone, but it's not for me. It's to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that painting is for somebody else at some point.
Wow, that's cool. Very, in that Enneagram system,
hmm
when you are a number 8, well, I think
hmm
it is. Number 9 is, which is the highest personality. It's not that one's better than the other, it's just the
hmm
highest on thing, but it's the peacemaker.
Okay.
And when you're a number 8 and you're actually not under stress, you're
hmm
actually like flowing in this higher version of yourself,
Okay.
you lean into the 9, which is the peacemaker. And so um and also I think part of that is a helper, like you're giving something.
hmm
And so that would make a lot of sense that if when you're in that zone, it's not about
hmm
you. You're not trying to prove yourself. There's no, there's none of that stuff going on. It's low ego, and you're giving a gift. And I love the fact that you're giving it even to
hmm
someone you don't even know
hmm
is there, right?
hmm
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Mm. Tell me a story of you creating a work of art and then you found, at some point in the future, the receiver of that gift, but you didn't know who the receiver of that was going to be.
Um, I've often heard of somebody who had my paintings, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who they are. I would just hear from somebody else, oh, I went to a certain place and there was your art on the walls, but I don't know who they are. But it's just a strange feeling that, oh,
Mm.
there's a piece of me somewhere. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're leaving a part of yourself somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got lots of these little parts of myself all around the world. So it's kind of a strange feeling, you know.
Do you feel like it's a part of yourself, like a part of your flesh was ripped out and pushed over there, or do you feel like it's a part of yourself, like maybe a hand that's opening up? It was a fist and now it's opening up, so it's expanding and taking more space up,
Um,
or something different.
yeah, it's more like leaving parts of myself.
Okay.
Hmm. More like leaving parts of myself around.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
That's cool. You like the what's his name? Clayman. Anyways, I was remembering this character in Batman, and he was made of clay or something, and he could just
Oh.
like throw little parts of himself, and he had like little versions of himself around. Uh,
I guess I can also equate it like giving myself.
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like giving away parts of myself.
Now, um, talk to me about the dialogue that you're having in that moment of Zen when you're working on a piece and that you're transferring yourself into your work.
Hmm.
Like, what's that noise? What does it feel or sound like that's
Huh.
going on in you?
It's hard to express. Other artists wouldn't probably understand, but it's like hours can go by and you don't even realize it. It's almost like channeling something.
Mm-hmm.
That might freak people out, but that's that's what sometimes it feels like you're channeling something. Um, you're just sitting there and you're so engrossed in the work. You're focused on it's a simple thing like lines and color, not really focusing on the whole, just focusing on little parts and getting lost in there.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, 4 hours have gone by and you step back and wow, look at everything that's on there. It doesn't always happen,
Mm-hmm.
but the times that you do end up in the zone, it's it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not like a high. I can't explain it. If you've been through it, you wouldn't understand what it's like. Other people could relate, but it's getting lost in something and stepping back and wow, did I do that? It's almost like you were channeling something else that did it.
Yeah. Everything you just articulated there makes 100%
Mm-hmm.
uh, makes makes sense 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely, we've had a couple guests on who talked about the channeling, or
Mm-hmm.
um, it was funny when I was. I remember having that argument with artists a lot
Mm-hmm.
years ago, um, where their ego would get in the way, and they're like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
I made this," right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they had to quote unquote feel that they owned this thing,
Right.
and then I also see where a lot of artists where they think the medium is the secret to what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and not realizing that they are the medium,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
you're channeling something.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
I find that,
technique will only take you so far, right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or a lot of artists will become, and I'll say this with you because I can tell in your work, this doesn't go on with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of artists to validate themselves. I am an artist. I am good. I'm highly skilled. They
Mm-hmm.
become incredible copiers,
Yeah.
masters of representation and rendering.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're not allowing the channeling to go on, it lacks life and soul and meaning.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And I find you could tell with certain artworks that are just, if it's just technique, it
Mm-hmm.
can be impressive at first. But when everything's focused on technique and ego,
Mm-hmm.
the work gets boring after a while.
Absolutely.
You tired of it. You get tired of it really
Yep.
quickly.
Yep.
You might be impressed for a bit, but then you move on. Your soul has to be touched.
Yep.
Technique will only impress you for so long. If your soul isn't moved by a piece, you tire quickly.
And I think we live in a day and age which we're going to see a lot more of that probably for the next decade or two.
Mm-hmm.
Because on two reasons. One, we went through this abstract expressionism during the 50s, 60s, 70s, that kind of era
Mm-hmm.
where there was no order. There was no, what do you
Mm-hmm.
need to learn how to draw for?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's now the pendulum is swinging. And so they will say, oh, no, now we need like hyper skills, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you need to be able to draw every hair, or,
Mm-hmm.
and so it goes on to that extreme.
And artificial intelligence will be able to do that quite well too.
Exactly. Exactly.
If the soul is lacking, it's going to show in the art.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And yeah, and it's sad because there's a deception in it. Well, I have
Mm-hmm.
this incredible skill. And the reason why, because the abstract artist, what would the public say? The public will say, like 5-year-old can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you
Mm-hmm.
go the other route and no one's ever going to say, hey, my 5-year-old can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
They give a compliment, but it's not a compliment to
Mm-hmm.
an artist. Oh my God, that looks like a photo.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're always like, what are you talking? Is that a photo? There's
Mm-hmm.
soul in this thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
You just grin and say thank you.
exactly. Cash your check now. Make sure the signature's on there. Yep. Okay. Uh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now as a master artist?
Well, thank you for saying master artist. Hopefully I
When I
will
say
be
that
a
5, 10 years from now, I'm not saying necessarily
Yeah, thanks.
today.
Okay, just still painting, and I always want to make sure that I paint what I want to paint. I
Okay.
never box myself in. I know it's a big thing with galleries and all the magazines and popular articles. They tell you focus on one thing. If you're a landscape painter, be a landscape painter. I can't just limit myself to any one thing. I
Mm-hmm.
want to paint it all and I want to do it all. So if I want to paint animals, I want to keep painting animals. I want to do landscape. I just want to do it all. I want to be free enough to be able to paint what I want when I want, and hopefully people enjoy it.
Nice.
And I think that's all I can ask for, really.
When you transition from the pets and you
Mm-hmm.
go to the plein air,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say that plein air, what about the landscapes and is it that you want to experience through your canvas?
The atmosphere.
I knew you were going to say that, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's the light, the mood, the atmosphere. That's what I want to capture. There's some
Nice.
really great landscape artists out there that really inspire me, and I hope to be half the painters that they are someday with
Hmm.
landscapes.
Who are a few of them?
One of them is a good friend of mine. She's a local artist. Her name is Sue Lampinen. She
Okay.
does landscapes and pastels. She is just amazing. She loves to paint snow scenes in winter. She's a Finlander and she just loves winter. And she lives on the lake. And her winter paintings are just absolutely breathtaking. The mood she captures
Hmm.
is amazing. And then there's another Canadian artist. His name is Renato Musillo. A lot of people have heard about him. He's pretty famous. He has just a magical quality about his work that, wow, they have to be seen because they're just absolutely amazing. The way he captures mood and atmosphere.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds. You have to send me a link of his work because my brain can't even
Oh,
comprehend how to even begin to spell his name.
yeah. Get
So,
get ready to go wow a lot.
for sure.
Hmm.
Sorry, I was translating that into Canadian for you.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for sure, eh?
yeah, for sure. Eh? So, what's your process here? um, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, really, you really are happy
I am.
because 5, 10 years from now, you just want to keep doing what you are doing.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Very cool. That's a great place to be.
It is.
It's strange because it's a very it's an ever present, which most people don't live in the present. They're either
Mhm.
dealing with depressions of the past or anxieties of the future, and it's strange. The quickest way to beat depression and anxiety is just to be present.
Exactly.
And
All we have is now.
yeah, and I like the fact that even when you think of the future, it's still, you know, you're projecting your now onto it. You
Hmm.
see, and that's really cool. That's very, very cool. Very, very cool, actually. Um, so if you were going to talk to a fellow artist,
Hmm.
let's say a group of artists with white hair and purple hair said, "Come on down to the local art community.
Okay.
Share some advice with us. What? How would you encourage them?"
uh, what gets said all the time, do something every day,
Mm,
have your own space. I think that was a big thing in my life when I really started taking off in my art, is to
okay.
have my own designated space in my house where you can just leave your art supplies out. You don't
Mm,
have to put them away, so you can just walk in, do something for 15 minutes to half an hour and leave and not have to worry about putting everything away. So that personal space is extremely important. And when you have that, then you could do something every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes to half an hour. If you do something every day, you're going to see your skills improve by leaps and bounds,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to keep growing and always keep learning.
Hmm.
Never think you've arrived and that you know enough, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Yep.
You know.
Let's talk about the space. Like,
Mhm.
what led up to that moment where you're like, enough is enough. I need to either you tell the story. Like, what got you to what was that moment that you said,
Um,
I have to do this?
yeah, I was married before, and we had a house. And for some reason, I was never able to have my own space in that house, my own designated studio where everything could just be laid out and left there. I don't know why.
Oh
It was just
no.
could never do it. And after the divorce and moved in with my current husband,
Hmm.
I kept talking about painting, talking about painting. Well, it didn't last long. He built me a studio right away,
Wow.
and I just started painting from day one as soon as the studio was built. And he's always encouraged me that way. I had my studio space right away, and that was my space. And great. Every night I go in the studio, and that's it. I just paint for hours, and moved to the second house here, and same thing. The studio was the first thing to get built in the house.
Wow.
So I
So as a
really
as a as a
appreciate that.
as a lady woman,
Mhm.
um, the fact that your husband twice now has
Mhm.
proven that he loves you.
Mhm.
He thinks you are significant enough to even build a significant space,
Mhm.
not just once, but twice. And I find it
Mhm.
even amazing that the first thing he did
Mhm.
was build his queen's domain. Um, talk to us about how that makes you feel.
Well, pretty special, and I'm very grateful too, because it's part of who I am. So it's kind of like saying, "This is who you are. I accept who you are, and voila, here you go. Go be you."
Wow.
And even though he loses me for hours and hours because I'm always in the studio, but still my biggest supporter. So I'm very
Yeah.
appreciative of that.
That's a wise part on a man's part because men, we like to be alone. Um,
Yeah, he
and
also
so it's
gets a
like,
TV that way at night. So
exactly. I'm going to watch the news. You go paint.
yeah, I want to watch the
Just be
hockey
back before I go to sleep. No. Um, that's awesome. I actually had one of my students that I was training locally. Her husband built a studio for her,
Nice.
and it was I think it was 15 years ago he built it, but 11 years ago he passed away.
Oh,
And to honor him for honoring her, she decided that she would become a full-time painter. And she's
nice.
I mean, it's probably one of the most gorgeous studios.
Hmm.
Just insane. Um, and I actually met another lady, and her husband passed away,
Hmm.
uh, and he was able to financially set um, his family up, and um, and so she, I guess, remodeled the house, or they bought it, whatever it was, but
Hmm.
basically she was able to then put in her studio, and so there's that's interesting. I want to hear more stories about that, like
Hmm.
how couples enabled each other. You know,
Hmm.
that's really really cool.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be able to have.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. That brings me to, you asked me earlier too about defining moments and when I decided to paint full time and that, and I'd mentioned that little old lady, but there was also another very extremely pivotal moment that it took a few years, but my mother passed away from
Mm,
cancer in 2011. And of course, by now she was one of my biggest supporters in my art, but I saw her struggle her whole life. She worked really hard and never really having anything special for just herself. It was always about us and giving to us and working really hard. And then she got sick, in her golden years and died. And
mm,
that really affected me deeply. And got to a point when I was working last year also, I told myself I don't ever want to end up like that.
mm.
Like the soul must be fed. And I don't ever
Yep.
want to become miserable enough in life where I get sick and end up dying young. So
Mm,
that was another defining moment in my life that made me decide you have to do what you're born to do.
yep. Yeah. That's yeah. A lot of people talk about the starving artist,
Mm,
and I'm not really concerned about starving artists, but
hmm.
I'm concerned about artistically starving, and
Yes.
designing a life a lot of times built on expectations and pleasing other people, or managing the piece, or just doing what you think you're supposed to be doing,
You said it.
and the whole entire time there's that voice in you that's saying, "I'm dying here, please."
Hmm. Absolutely.
And yeah, it's
You said it.
so as a working artist, um, you're selling your work, you're bringing in clients, you're dealing with them. Who are two or three people or businesses or services you would that you're grateful for, that help you facilitate your business?
Um, well, a lot of people that I know personally,
Hmm.
they help spread the word. They're big encouragers of my art. Family members, my husband for one, always talking about my art. um, Family members, they love to talk about my art to everybody they know. So that's really important to me. And other artists in the community.
Hmm.
There's lots of artists. Our area is rich and really amazing artists. So we're really fortunate in that way in my area.
Hmm.
And it's pretty not isolated, but it's in northern Ontario. It's far from Toronto, the big centers. So we're pretty fortunate to have an area that we have a rich arts community and have so many talented people. So I do like to stay in touch with those people whenever I can,
Mm-hmm.
and just help encourage each other and share the word about our arts. And then, you know what? There's also social media. It's such a game changer.
Mm.
Such a game changer. The internet and social media has changed everything. In my life, it's changed everything where arts are concerned. I don't think I ever would have been able to do what I do now without social media and the internet.
Wow. Well, I guess you would have just sold locally, and now you have a piece of you all over the world.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Um, so let me ask you, before I ask you how people can get in contact with you,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you the most important question of the night. Get ready. It's
Okay.
very, very deep.
Uh-oh.
Very, very deep. Very deep.
Okay.
What do you love to eat?
Oh, lots of things. I love Italian food, pasta. Give me pasta with garlic and cheese, and you've got
Oh,
me.
nice, nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. And but realistically, I also love Doritos, jalapeno cheddar Doritos.
What? Really?
Yeah, they're my downfall. So this week I haven't had any, and I'm committing to not having any for a long time. I really want to try and wean off of that because, health. But
So
yeah,
that's how you get that atmosphere in there, that little orangey glow.
yeah, orangey glow. Yeah,
How do you get that orange in the eyes? What are you talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. It's not pastel. That's Doritos on the fingers.
And you said, and did you say it's jalapeno?
Jalapeno cheddar Doritos.
There's that Rodriguez. Okay, now I
Yeah,
got
hey, it must be, eh?
it.
There you go. Yeah, I try and eat healthy.
Uh-huh.
That's why I'm giving up those Doritos. But I try to mainly eat healthy. Another thing, I eat figs with honey every night before going to bed.
Oh my God, that
I've
sounds so good.
seen, yeah, and I've seen us drive all over town, like do 5 stores looking for figs sometimes
Wow.
because I have to have those figs when I go to bed.
Nice, nice.
Crazy,
Yeah.
but yeah.
The best cheesecake I've ever had in my life was
Mhm.
it was like a cheesecake and it had figs on top of it with
Oh,
honey
yeah.
dripped on it. Oh my God.
Oh,
That was insane.
I think my favorite cheesecake is pumpkin cheesecake, where my
Oh
mom
my
used to
goodness.
make this pumpkin cheesecake. You got your cheesecake layer on the bottom, then you've got pumpkin on top, and it's just to die for.
Oh my God. Okay.
Mhm. The- Do you need cheesecake now?
I need something. Maybe not cheesecake,
Yeah.
but definitely something.
Yeah.
But I think that Doritos, it's funny. You remind me of another artist, out of South Africa, and she's
Mhm.
highly productive, and there's something about the two of you, and your answer about not cheesecake, Doritos
Uh-huh.
reminds me of her answer to that question, which was McDonald's.
Oh.
And she's like this very like elegant kind of woman.
Mhm.
And she's like, I love McDonald's, in her little South African accent. I'm like, what is it, McDonald's? Like,
Oh, that's cute.
maybe it's a different kind of McDonald's in South Africa. I don't know. But she's like, oh yeah, I go maybe twice a week in McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
So like you two so far have won the what
Oh, yeah.
award for
Oh, that's
uh
funny.
Doritos. Wow. And jalapeno Doritos on top of it.
Yeah. Jalapeno cheddar.
Oh yeah, jalapeno cheddar. Sorry. Um
You don't have that in the States?
oh, I believe we do.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'm sure they have jalapeno cheddar everything.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh
probably.
yeah. So Carol, how can people connect with you? How can they find you?
They can find me on my website at carolerodrigue.com
Okay.
or on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. Where else? I'm also on G Plus.
Oh, what?
Anybody does
Oh,
G
G
plus?
plus. Oh,
Yeah,
Google
yeah,
plus.
Google plus. Yeah, G plus. Must be the
Go
French
fast.
coming out.
Yeah. I'm on Q plus, Quebec.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I'll do is I'll take your website and your Facebook and your Instagram links, and I'll put them in the show notes, and then people can just click over. I noticed on your website that you have like all your contact links and stuff at the bottom, so
I do.
people can go there and find out. Um, for anybody here who's wanting to just kind of get an edge,
Mm-hmm.
um, I really encourage you to go to Carole's website or one of these places and see her paintings, and really just take some time and allow yourself to feel the atmosphere, the thickness of the atmosphere. A lot of people who copy photos, their images become frozen. They're not within. It's timeless, but in a negative way. Okay, they're frozen. Yours are not frozen. The atmosphere has warmth to it. Okay, and there's like a still quietness to it.
I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and so go and look at her work, because I've seen a lot of work, and this is a very rare, very very rare um, thing to pull off, and I don't know if you do it with deliberate intention or if it's just something that kind of occurs intuitively. But either way, you're achieving it, and it's part of your fingerprint, and it was an extreme joy just to experience it. So,
Well, thank you. I'm truly honored.
Hi there, my name's Lori Calabrese. I'm an artist from Pennsylvania, and I wanted to share with you why I took Core 80 and what I got from it. So I took Core 80 because I wanted to improve my skill set as an artist, right? I wanted to get to the next level. And while my art has been well received, I feel that my art lacks a level of elegance and sophistication that I want it to have. And I knew to get to that level, I would have to improve my composition and design skills. So I enrolled in Core 80. In Core 80, we took deep dives into masterpieces. We analyzed line, brush strokes, spacing. We analyzed relationships between all the components of the piece. We started seeing the relationship, that main focal point, whether it's a face, an arm, a flower. We started seeing the relationship that has with something on the other side of the painting that is not even noticeable. And it's amazing. So we drew these relationships, and we drew and we drew and we analyzed, and you saw what you ended up seeing. What unfolded was the intent behind the masterpiece. You got into the artist's head. It was amazing. It was exciting. I felt connected to masters in a way that I never have before. And I was so excited. And now I have this skill set, right? I have the skill set. I have the concept behind it. And I can apply these techniques to my work. So now I will use this, and I will use these skills to take the story that I'm painting, right? Why am I painting a piece? What is my intent? What is the story that I'm getting across? And I will use these design concepts to lead the viewer into my story. And while the viewer, they might not be able to understand all the relationships that I created, the subconscious will put the pieces together. So I'm very excited, very happy, and I look forward to watching my work become sophisticated and elegant and the level that I want it to be. Thanks.
in just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlying structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning, and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.